Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Tech Guys Who Invest. We're so excited to have Yakov Smart on the show with us to talk about the importance of connecting and networking, especially using technology. Yakov, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really glad to be here.
Well, if we're going to talk about the importance of networking and stuff like that, what would you say, in your opinion, why people should have a strong network? Can you not?
Hey,
can you not
Kevin,
hear me?
you froze up, buddy.
No problem. All right, well, we'll cut that out. Can you hear me okay now?
Yep,
Perfect.
you're back. I was
All right,
trying to
perfect.
figure out if it was on my side.
Yeah, me too. I was looking.
But since that's Yakov's face, and I was like, okay, that was Kevin.
I know. I was like, wait, what's going on? All right, so we'll just cut this whole thing out, and then I'll just dive right in and ask you the questions. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what is the importance of connecting and building a strong network?
Well, we've all heard this saying, anyone who studied any sort of personal development, personal growth, that what's that old quote? Your network is your net worth, right? We've all heard that. I think Jim Rohn, the late great Jim Rohn, he coined that. And now networking has there's a nuance to it that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. Whether it's people who want to network with potential investors, money partners, or even just professionally, or even build good relationships and good friendships. And I think the nuance is having the ability to do that online, to do that virtually, and to do that intentionally. And it's really powerful to be able to intentionally find the people that you want to build those relationships with, where you can have that authentic connection and also have a process for doing that that's duplicatable, while at the same time, and this is super important, having it be natural, right? Where you're not sounding like a robot. So I think that the age that we live in, that's what's available. And there's a lot to it, but it's more important now, I would say, than even it's ever been.
Great. So, Jakob, we know you do a lot with LinkedIn and using that tool as a way to network. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Maybe about some of the advantages of using LinkedIn, and especially if you compare that to other social media like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of social media out there. There's new ones seemingly sprouting up every day. There's TikTok, that's a big thing that I'm not personally on. I don't know about you guys. And I'm sure there's networking opportunities there as well. But my personal favorite is LinkedIn, because the people there are there for different reasons. They're there to build relationships. They're there to grow professionally, personally, learn, and see what's out there. And just the caliber of the individual. You have a place where the average household income is a six-figure household income. And you've got a lot of decision makers, the movers and shakers of the world, they're all on LinkedIn, and they're there with a professional intention. And what I love about LinkedIn is when you know how to leverage the platform, you can very intentionally find the people that you're looking for and start building those relationships there without having to be this constant content creator, without having to do super fancy online marketing. That kind of networking is available directly on that platform to start.
Love it. So let's say somebody wanted to pick Instagram as their primary channel of networking, or they wanted to do LinkedIn, whatever the social media channel is. What would your advice be for having them start building that network? What would that most immediate next step be?
Well, the first thing, you have to know where you're going, right? So you have to understand, who are the kind of people I want to connect with? Where do I want to grow my sphere of influence? And, the way to communicate online, let's say with 25-year-old biker dudes, for example, would be very different than, university professors or corporate executives who are between 40 and 55, for example, right? So it's a bit of a different approach. You want to pick the right platform. When we work with students and clients, we talk about, this applies across the board. And what I think what I'm going to say is one of those things that's evergreen, meaning even if they're in 30 years, someone listens to this and there's 30 new social media platforms, this next piece right here is really key to understand, is not trying to be on every single platform at once, because unless you've got a large team, it's hard to do all those well. So I'm a big proponent of picking what I call the big three. So 3 platforms, and in the context of business or investor lead generation, 3 platforms where you're going to make the biggest investment. When we talk about making an investment, we talk about investing time, investing thought energy, and sometimes even investing money to accelerate things. So it's not being scattered. It's picking the big 3, and sometimes it's going to be a big 1 or 2, and that's okay, right? Because I know a lot of people listening to this are probably small business owners, or they don't have huge teams. They're not quite as leveraged, and that's perfectly okay. So it's picking those big 3, and also thinking about the platforms you genuinely enjoy. I personally, a lot of people don't know this, but I made an Instagram profile like 5 years ago, whole different project. I mean, I was a very different person too. And I mean, I haven't checked Instagram probably in a couple of years, and I have no, at this point, burning desire to do that, right? Even though, could there be a lot of opportunity on Instagram to make contacts and make money? Absolutely. But I'm just not interested in it right now. It's not aligned to where I want to be. So to stay in my alignment, to stay in my pocket, I put the majority of my bandwidth in LinkedIn when it comes to building those key relationships, and a few other ways for doing that online as well. So, it's about being specific. It's okay to say no to being on a certain social media or a certain platform, or doing a certain activity. Like, I know you guys do this podcast and you guys rock it out and do a great job. And I know there's probably people listening. They're like, if only I could do a podcast and be like these guys. And to some people, they would love it and be a great fit for them. But you're going to have people, and I see this all the time, some people try to do a podcast and they're just not that aligned with it, or they're not good at it, or it's such a time suck and a burden on them that it distracts them. So it's really understanding what your pocket is, what your lane is going to be for that networking. And it's also being specific about the types of people who are a good fit for you to meet, right? I mean, it's sometimes a connection or a contact who's local, who's well connected in the local business community, would be a better contact for you than someone like Richard Branson. Now, how is that? Well, Richard, he's a billionaire, gazillionaire, whatever he is, but that person may have more of those direct contacts for getting to where you want to be. And more importantly, maybe you can offer more value to that person too. So a lot of people are a little delusional with the kind of contacts they want to make, but it's all about, and one of my favorite things too that we can talk about is leveraging strategic partnerships, connecting with people who have those spheres of influence and doing it in a way where they receive tremendous value.
Oh, what a really good stuff in there. And I'm curious kind of how you first discovered LinkedIn. That might be interesting to know.
Yeah.
How did you discover that as the best social media networking tool for investors?
Well, when I first heard about LinkedIn, I mean, I'm not necessarily an early adopter on it, but when I heard about it, I was still in school actually, and before I had a business. And I heard of it in the context of being this super serious platform that you go to post your resume, and that idea just did not excite me at all, because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was like, I don't want to be all stuffy and deal with this. But I was on there, and then out of school, I was doing various things in online business, and where I really started to see it as an advantageous platform actually, when I graduated school, I moved to Vegas. So I made a trip I was in southern Georgia, like a really rural place. A lot of people wouldn't expect that, but that's where I went to school, grew up in Atlanta. And I was determined to live in Vegas. And the primary reason for that wasn't mainly networking. It was just to chase girls and party and, do something different than what was in rural Georgia. I mean, looking back, it was kind of crazy. So, but I moved out there. I, barely knew anyone. And I was like, wait a minute, I can start to use LinkedIn to build my network out there. And I did. I connected with a couple pretty influential people that led to a few opportunities. I didn't really know what I was doing. So it was just like, I got lucky there. I started being intentional, and action often leads to better luck. And so, where I really started using it for business purposes, I was selling software, and, it was my job to build business relationships. And we used a very archaic method of smiling and dialing. And I would sit there and make like hundreds of cold calls a day, and it sucked. And so I started to tap into LinkedIn as kind of a way for finding decision makers. And it's felt more authentic to me. A lot of people weren't using LinkedIn, nearly utilizing LinkedIn as much back then for kind of biz dev purposes. And then, I'd also do in-person networking too. And, I casually mentioned some of the things I was doing on LinkedIn and people wanted to know more. So I stumbled upon this unique way of using LinkedIn. And this was back, before they changed the user interface. For people who don't know, Microsoft bought it back in 2016 or 2017. And I was already, teaching people how to leverage the platform back then, but it underwent a huge shift, and everything I had been talking about, pretty much doubled or tripled in effectiveness, because they changed it from a stuffy platform that was kind of hard to manage. They made it a lot more user-friendly and social. And so it opened up a lot of doors. And that's really how I got into, and specifically my pocket has always been and continues to be marketing and lead generation, using it. And lead generation, I mean, all it is, it's networking at scale, right? We can call it, we can throw fancy terms out there, but it's just networking at scale with the intention of building business relationships and doing business.
Love that definition of lead generation. Now, when you talk about reaching out to the right people and using it for networking, I wanted to take a step back here. Is how do you figure out who you should be reaching out to? And this is a two-part question. What are the ways to, how do you figure out the best ways to connect with them?
Yeah, so we talk about something in our programs called streams of commonality. So let's say, Kevin, that you're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and what's city? Remind me, or like what part of Florida is a big state?
Yep,
Tampa,
we're in
Florida.
Tampa.
Tampa. Okay, cool. So I know it's in Super Bowl champs.
Yep.
Yep. That's all. Yeah, apparently you guys win a lot of championships there. So congrats on that. I mean, it wasn't a great game, but kudos.
It was great, right? For us.
Tampa. Well, yeah, I mean, I would have loved to be a Buccaneers fan. I grew up a Falcons fan, so I was just like, oh, okay, something's got to give. But anyway, so Tampa. So if you wanted to go out there, you have to ask yourself streams of commonality. Okay, so you have something in common with people in the Tampa area, St. Pete area. I know, there's quite a big community there. And then, what's your background, right? It could be that you, for example, went to business school or engineering school, right? Or, you have an MBA, other MBAs, or maybe there's a nonprofit that you're really passionate about, right? Or maybe there's, something you want to get involved with, and you can find people who are decision makers at that organization or who are actively involved. Or maybe, you grew up speaking a different language, and that's another stream of commonality. Or maybe you served in the military, right? So, it's really easy to have those natural points of rapport based on those streams of commonality. And then, finding those people, I think, an issue that people have is sometimes, and I've certainly run into this because we're all human, is intimidation, right? We see someone's LinkedIn or we see their website and we're like, oh, that person's, really got it together. That's a really high value person. And we're like, it's just little old me. What do I bring to the table? And sometimes people overthink it and don't do anything. And what people need to realize, and this is a good constant reminder, everyone's got their flaws. Everyone's got things that they're working on. Everyone's got, ways that they can receive value, no matter, what their net worth is, what their occupation is, where they live. So it's important to understand that, you do have a lot of value that you can bring to the table. And then you think about, what's in it for them, right? First of all, just connecting on LinkedIn, for example, a lot of people have LinkedIn connections who they haven't met in person or they haven't had a one-on-one conversation with, which is okay. But, if you want to further extend that relationship, it's finding out how you can deliver value first through a LinkedIn message, either asking them a question or offering them something of value that would educate them or entertain them or inspire them. And then any offline relationship, any online relationship, you're going to want to take offline, right? And that doesn't mean you have to shake their hand, meet them in person, but it could be in a phone call or a Zoom call or, FaceTime, whatever the case may be. So, it's being intentional in that approach, and also, detachment, right? So it's a little philosophical here, but detachment is, understanding that, hey, you may get rejected or it may not work in that specific instance, and still going for it anyway and celebrating the progress. And hey, when you put yourself out there, good things happen, good circumstances start to happen for you. And having the willingness to do that. And here's the thing, and I find this kind of amazing too, right? Especially in business relationships. a lot of the times, I've built some business relations with some people who are very well respected in their space, or, people consider them influencers. And oftentimes people ask how, and, you usually like 80% of it is just asking in a way that's attractive, right? I mean, it's not even that we did some brilliant, crazy strategy. It's like asking in a way that's well positioned and giving value, right? So it's, just by taking that action and being intentional, you really start to set yourself apart, and good things start to really snowball.
Yeah, I really like what you said there about asking, but asking in a way that's attractive to them. That is, yeah, that's really good advice for any investor who's trying to achieve something, or, ask, but do it in a way where it's attractive. I really love that. Now, Jakob, you had mentioned that we're going to reach out to folks, we're going to meet them online, and then we're going to try to take it offline, which made me curious about how the pandemic might have changed things or for using LinkedIn as a networking tool. And I know you started teaching this long before the pandemic, but it seems like it's more relevant than ever now, especially with so many people doing online meetings and things. I'm just curious your thoughts around that.
Yeah, it is. And that's a great question. So, and there was a stat that I saw the other day, I might butcher it, but something like, I don't know if it's 50%, but LinkedIn reported this in 2020, either engagement or conversations on LinkedIn were up by like 50 or 55% across the platform as a whole. So
Wow.
people are spending a lot more time there. There's a lot more buzz, a lot going on. I mean, they've released some new features as well, like things like live streaming. They've enhanced groups and various things like that. So I think people are more captive. I think people are consuming a lot more content online. I think people are much more open to making investment decisions, without meeting the other person in person. Like, we've all heard of platforms like Yield Street, for example. I mean, they reported 1.7 billion, I believe, in private capital placed Q4 of 2020. So, we've just kind of, and here's, I guess, the biggest thing to consider here. I think the world of offline and online has really merged, and I think that's here to stay. I think, eventually the COVID thing will die out, but I think the merge is here to stay. I think conferences and events are going to be back. People are longing for that. But I think now when you meet someone at a conference, it's going to be much quicker for them to go and add you on LinkedIn or go Google your name, after the first conversation, whereas before, it'd be in the actual conference follow-up. So I just think, it's really merged, and, you have the opportunity to, and, when in person comes back, to take people from online to in person, or, from in person to online. And, there's so much synergy, and it's kind of all been blended. And I think, people as a whole, there's a higher level of comfort with online. The people that used to be a little rebellious around it, or who weren't super tech savvy, now out of necessity, they've opened their mind to it, which is cool.
Yeah, I like that you talked about the out of necessity. I wanted to kind of jump back when you talk about intentionality, right? While lead generation is networking at scale, it's almost as if you don't want to just send. It's not like the smile and dial approach. There's more of a more of an intentionality of strategic cerebral process. How do you go about that on LinkedIn? Do you search for keywords? Do you search for things you like in common? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so you want to be talking to the right who. So you want to build a targeted list. There's several ways to do it on LinkedIn. There's nuances. I mean, and if you can have different like layers to it, right? For example, if we want to find people who can passively invest in a deal, or who can JV partner, we want to find people who not only are they in high income type of roles, or they're very likely to be high net worth individuals, but it's longevity. People who have been in that role for, let's say, 6+ years, or if they're in the C-suite, that they're at a company that has at least 1,000 employees, right? So we really want to look at the criteria that's going to be most aligned. And then as far as like actually what to say to give value, there's 3 ways that I know of to do it at scale. Okay. And we're talking about getting to the hook point first, right? Because online, it's noisy as can be. It's going to get even noisier. And there's two types of people you can network with or do business with online. There's the majority of people who have no idea who you are, why they should care. There's a bunch of people vying for their attention. And then there's everyone who's at least raised their hand and said, you know what, I want to know more, whether that's through an opt-in, whether that's responding to your LinkedIn message. They've at least invested a precious 3 seconds of curiosity, right? And it sounds small, but it's such a huge thing for building value and building trust. There's 3 ways to do it. And this also applies, we can talk about online advertising because that's part of lead generation too. But like in terms of LinkedIn specifically and direct messaging, first way is to ask the right question, right? So ask a question that's going to engage them, that's open-ended, that, is going to spark curiosity and they're likely to answer, right? And, one good way to do it is to start it with, have you ever thought about this? Or are you familiar with this? Or, have you heard about this, right? It's something that when you give the right context, it can be really valuable. Another thing is to pinpoint, a challenge that they're probably having, right? Or a challenge that you're having that you overcome or that you were seeing, right? And if you get really specific and you talk to the right person, there is value in awareness, right? And there is value in saying, you know what, there might be a solution, there might be a better way or a new way to do it. And the third way is simply offering something like this podcast episode could be one of those things that's educational in nature, that has some value and that educates people. It could be a cheat sheet, it could be a video series, I love doing webinars, something that builds trust at scale and provides a ton of value to people, and offering that for free and seeing who's going to raise their hand and want to know more.
Nice. That's great. Now, what about mistakes you see, especially from people who are new to this? What
Yeah.
what are some mistakes you commonly see when people first get a program, things they're doing wrong?
Yeah, well, people try to jump the gun sometimes and try to do everything at once. And there's definitely a bit of a learning curve, right? And, primarily these days we work with people who want to find investors and money partners, right? And so the very first thing people think that they need to do, and, I've had this too, and I'm kind of, recovering from it, to action addiction, like we have to do 15 different things to feel validated or successful or like we're making progress. And it's BS, because all that matters at the end of the day is the results, right?
Yeah.
And how we feel about it and what it adds for us and for the other person. So, sometimes people are like, well, what do I say in the content? And, how many times a day should I be posting? And, personally, I don't post to LinkedIn. I mean, very rarely, unless I'm sharing someone's stuff or I'm engaging with someone else's content. But you're much better off engaging than posting your own stuff, especially as you're getting started. If you don't have the bandwidth to create a bunch of content, and some people don't like creating content, so don't do it, right? So the very first thing is you have to know how to find people. There's different ways to pinpoint the right type of person. One big mistake that's like, a head scratching mistake, but people are making it. If you want to build new relationships on LinkedIn, make sure your profile is set to public. If it's set to private, your reach is going to be severely limited on everything. And, you're basically closing yourself off from a lot of opportunity, right? One little thing too that drives a lot of people crazy, that's a fixable thing, is LinkedIn, unless you opt out of them, will send you a bunch of notifications for every little thing that happens. Your connection's having a birthday, you get an email, right? Turn that off, right? No one's got time for it, right? I mean, you keep up where you want to keep up, but I turn those off. I think it's one of the first things that we recommend for people, just for sanity's sake, right? And then the next thing is, gearing your presence, gearing your profile instead of a resume, gearing it as something that's valuable and insightful to the person, like what's in it for them, something that's going to capture the attention of the person you want to build a relationship with. So being more intentional in the way that you set up your profile and thinking of it as far beyond a resume. Okay. And then the next piece is, having the patience and looking at things scientifically, right? Because it's like this one, it's not a matter of, oh, this didn't work, or, oh, this worked. It's not, as black and white, 100% or 0%. Usually the first time you do it, you're going to get some results, but not as optimal as you could be getting. And it's a matter of, okay, knowing what variables to tweak there's always room for improvement. It could be switching the targeting a little bit or adjusting the messaging, or maybe you just haven't given enough time. We talk about the straitjacket approach. So, if it's been 24 hours and you don't have an influx of leads yet, it's okay. Like, let the system kind of work, right? And have something that's based on metrics, where it's not about posting and hoping. It's not about how many likes you get. It's not a popularity contest. It's the number of quality relationships you're building, the leads that you're generating. And if you're someone who's looking for money partners, growing that investor list of people you can nurture to deal ready, who ultimately, can place capital with you.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree. So how do you feel about those people that will send you this quick request to connect on LinkedIn, and then you get spammed a bunch by a bunch of random things you weren't expecting? I've experienced that. I know other my colleagues experienced that. To me, that seems like a big no-no, but I'd love to hear it from your perspective as an expert.
Yeah, so it is a big no-no if you're doing it like the spammy way. I mean, I get those messages all the time too. It's like, here it comes. I'm like, I think one time I got a message, this was a few years ago, but this dude, I kid you not, cannot make this stuff up. He tried to sell me like 5 different things in his message. Like, it was ridiculous, man. He had like 5 different links, 5 different offers in his message. We just connected. He's like, I'm going to go for it, And to me, that's kind of being in scarcity, right? If you're just going to go and spam people, and it's not a very abundant way to do things. So, it's okay to put an offer out there as long as it's something of value. Like the way that I do it, I invite people when we connect, we ask a question. I forget the exact wording, but the question is something around, if they're interested in expanding their network of investors or something like that, that's open-ended enough to gauge their interest. And guess what? If they're not, it's okay. No harm, no foul. They're probably never going to become customers anywhere, or they're not ready to engage and explore the content yet. But if they are, it's time to make them an offer. I'm not going to offer them to pull out their credit cards and buy something yet, but I am going to offer them something free, whether it's a webinar, cheat sheet, whatever is coming up, and allow people to engage, and then allow people to self-select. If they're the right fit, they can take the next step, but to always have a next opportunity for them to engage, and to do it in a way where they've raised their hand and said yes. And the people that don't raise their hand, or the people are like, no, thank you, I'm good, I'm not interested, it's okay. Celebrate that. You're not wasting their time, they're not wasting your time, and it goes on. You can still stay connected on LinkedIn, because that might change. They'll see some of your stuff, or they'll hear about you. But it's understanding that there's so many people out there. I mean, there's like literally 700 million plus people on LinkedIn. I mean, you'll never run out of people to connect with. And so it's understanding that, and understanding that it's not about spamming, it's about giving value, but still having a systematic and intentional approach to it, where you're not talking about the weather with random strangers for 3 hours a day that leads to nowhere. That's also not cool.
Right.
Wow, millions. What did you say? 700 million?
Yeah, like 700 million plus accounts.
Oh my gosh, that's so many. I didn't know it was quite that high. So what happens when another platform pops up? Is that even a ability when you have so many on this one? It's almost like you could just continue to work this one until it clearly doesn't make sense for some reason. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, should people just kind of learn this one, stick to it?
I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, I don't think Facebook is going anywhere either. I don't think YouTube is going anywhere. These are business entities. They generate revenue from premium accounts, from advertising, from different things. So I wouldn't, anytime something is the next big thing, like right now, as we're having this conversation, Clubhouse is hot right now. A lot of people, I'm sure, have heard of it. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. I personally, I don't have an iPhone, so I have an Android, so I'm not on Clubhouse for that reason, but I've been on it, and I've seen what it's like, and I get where people are using it to build relationships. I think it's a cool tool, but I'm not hot to try to get on it, because again, it's not one of my big 3 right now. It's not where I want to be spending my time, and it's not necessarily necessary. It's not in the pocket. So I don't think LinkedIn is going anywhere. I think it's solid. It's stable in terms of, people are spending more time there. User activity is only going up. I think a lot of people are, kind of upset with Facebook for whatever reasons. And, there's a number of things people have issues with, and they're fed up with Facebook and Twitter, and now they're migrating to LinkedIn because there's less drama there, right? So, and plus, there's the other thing that's kind of funny about all this is, let's say a new company did sprout up that was similar or competed with them. That company would probably want to get acquired by LinkedIn because LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and that company would eventually become a part of LinkedIn, let's say. So there's also that.
Okay, so it really amounts to being deciding on what it is you want to focus on. Maybe you try Clubhouse and it says, "Oh wow, this is where I can see myself being a great fit for building relationships." That could be it. But I see your point also by focusing on the ones that, like you said, Facebook, LinkedIn. I love that there's that common theme of intentionality, and I think that's what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah.
Now,
and it's also where your audience is. Yeah, I mean, real quick, if you want to be somewhere but your audience just doesn't hang out there, then you have to think about that too.
Yeah,
awesome.
makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. When it comes to LinkedIn, what would you say are some tips for people to have in their profile? I know you talked about making it public. I feel that there's a wide range of images that people have. Some people have highly professional images, while others have grainy or not so professional images. Maybe certain keywords. Or what do you think would be some good tips for LinkedIn profiles?
Yeah, so the images, I'm not someone who thinks that you necessarily have to have a headshot, especially if the type of people you want to connect with aren't headshot type of folks, right? If you've got a great picture of you on a golf course or with your family, the kid has to be well lit and has to be pretty current, right? I mean, if you don't want a picture from 10 years ago, because that'd be weird for people to be, but people do that all the time, like older pictures or they look different, so have an updated picture. But it doesn't have to be a headshot. What it looks really tacky is when people like have a yearbook or something where they've got like a old school printed picture and they take a picture of that on their phone and then they use that for social. It always blows my mind, like doesn't make any sense at all. You also don't want to have your company logo on your personal page. It's just a little off too. So, having the sections filled out, right now there's a few key sections. There's the cover photo, there's the profile picture, there's the LinkedIn headline that's right below the picture, there's the experience section, and then there's the about section, or it used to be called the summary section. So having it filled out is a really good start. Keywords, certainly, like, areas of specialty, that's good for getting found. LinkedIn kind of works as a search engine too. You've got your own website, linking your website to your profile. There's a little place to do that. If you've got your own business, having a business page linked to your profile, also super important there too. And then just, no matter what content you put in there, use the eye test too. No matter what you're putting there, if it looks like one long paragraph, it just looks uninviting to read, right? So like spacing is a great thing. White space is a great thing online. As far as other specific contents include, I mean, it really depends on the context, right? But using, I guess a great rule of thumb is if you can anticipate the questions people are going to have around your product or service, or if you can anticipate maybe even some of the objections or the hesitations they might have around contacting you or learning more about your opportunity, it's great to address that out front. It's great for you to be the one to address that. It just shows this depth of empathy, and it also shows basically, you're showing people that you get them, right? And that's more important to a lot of people than that you've had 50 years of experience, right? It's, do you understand them? Do they feel understood? And do you grab their attention? So those are some things, that we can, I'm sure we can talk about specific situations if you guys would like, but those are some kind of things across the board that are super important.
Excellent. And Yakov, I know you covered this and all the things we were talking earlier about and much more in your program. Can you tell us a little bit about your LinkedIn Accelerator program?
Yeah, so it's an on-demand training program. It's specifically for people who want to use LinkedIn for building relationships with investors and growing their list of deal-ready investors. And you can find out more if you go to linkleads.us under programs. It's available. What I want to encourage people to do who are listening to this, especially for those of you who want to use LinkedIn to find investors and build investor relationships, whether you're just starting out on that journey or, you've already done a lot of deals and you want to expand. We have a free online training, and we usually have it a couple times a week. So if you go to linkedleads.us/RC webinar, linkedleads.us/RC webinar, if we can include that in the show notes for everyone who wants to find out more. It's more detailed on some of the stuff that we talk about, and it's specifically about that methodology for using LinkedIn to build key relationships with investors.
Love it. We'll definitely put that in the show notes for everybody
Great.
who's listening to this. So we wouldn't be the tech guys who invest.
Looks like Kevin froze. We're going to cut this piece out.
Gotta love my internet.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Kevin, you froze. That's okay. We'll just cut that piece out. This is our last question. I think we're ready to get
Can you hear me
started,
now?
It looks like you're back.
Yeah.
We're back now? All right. Okay. So we wouldn't be the tech guys who invest if we didn't ask you a tech question. And LinkedIn is, it's an application, it's a software, it's a website, social networking tool. I wanted to switch it up and ask you, what would you say would be an enhancement request that would make LinkedIn better?
Ooh, I have several. So the advertising platform could be much better. Just the targeting's a little clunky still, and it could be a lot more optimized with tracking and all those different things. The LinkedIn Live could be a little, like, not everyone has it right now. They're kind of rolling it out in different stages. So I think if people, if it was a little more pervasive, that would be good too. And I think, with streaming and podcasting and things like that, just encouraging that live interaction. And then LinkedIn groups, they've tried a lot of different things with those, but I think they could do a lot more to make those user friendly and to give group admins the ability to connect at scale with the group members. So they've come a long way, though. They've had a lot of new features. There's always room for improvement. And I think, where they're going is a much more social direction. If we were having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, they were very much professional. It was almost a little stuffy, where now, it's the entertainment values there. The social aspect is definitely getting there too.
Nice. Okay, Jakob. Well, it has been great having you on the show. We really thank you for coming on. Now, we'll put that in the show notes about the linkleads.us URL. Is that the place? Is that the best place for people to find you, or is there some other place they should contact you?
Yeah, so if people, they could go check out the free webinar. Outside of that, easiest thing, go to LinkedIn, Jakob Smart. I think I'm the only Jakob Smart on LinkedIn. Send me a connection request. Say that you heard about me on Tech Guys Who Invest. Glad to connect with you and network with you as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on.
All right. Thank you for having me.